Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Shan from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Today, I'm going to have an overview about the practice of earthen constructions in China, subject to my past 7 years research and practices in rural areas. The topic here is named with life from the earth, which means we are living in one planet and we are living original living with earthen buildings as well. First, please let me introduce you some background information about the topic. I think all of us already has the awareness about the global crisis of climate and resources. In the past few years, China has experienced at least 6 major unanticipated floods, 3 major earthquake disasters, and unseasonal droughts. The occurrence of natural disasters shows a more pronounced non-regional regularity. In the meantime, there is a lot of research in China has presented a conflict between urban-rural areas, urbanization forced and overcrowded downtown areas, and the hauling village at the same time. The contradiction is obvious. So what is the exactly truth we are facing to in China? Firstly, we must acknowledge that China has a very long culture and history of earthen dwellings, such as the Tulou in Fujian, King's Cave in cultural plants, terraced with flat roof earthen palm houses in Yunnan province. All these different forms of rammed earth buildings represent the adaptation of the local population to the current natural climatic conditions, geography situations, and the display of cultural beliefs. At the same time, these valuable earthen buildings are facing challenges and getting rapidly disappeared in the past few decades due to the vacancy of the villages. It is counted about 12.8% reduction about the quantity of natural villages in China from 2006 to 2021. Most of the villages where traditional rammed earth buildings still exist are facing serious problems of labor loss, land abandonment, building collapse, and the lack of care for elderly and the children left behind. That's why the central government of China released a political strategies to develop rural areas from 5 perspectives, including talents, organization, ecosystem, industry, culture, which named as rural revitalization. The first step to proceed the holistic rural revitalization is to build up a self-confident ability of local people with appropriate guidance. This is the first case I worked with in Yunnan province. The elderly, like the image shows, is about 60 years old in average, and they are not able to move to the downtown center to living together with their children. And this phenomenon of being left behind are a few social problems that have been arisen during economic development. In China, over 1/3 of population are living in the countryside. In the meantime, to catch up with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals issued by United Nations, Chinese government launched a dual carbon emission reduction policy. The point is, although the population is decreasing in rural areas, the overall energy consumption for building construction is increased, which means an inappropriate organization for rural dwellings construction. This is also a chance to explore a holistic solution from nature-based techniques. Rammed earth building is the most prominent of these. On one hand, the research about the earthen building in China was conducted from different fields. The most representative of these include the engineering-related research conducted by Xi'an University of Architecture and Technology and the Kunming University of Science and Technology, and the research related to architectural design theory and the vernacular practices in universities such as the China Academy of Art, Beijing University of Civil Engineering and Architecture, and the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Here I listed 5 famous scholars and architects and the research concentration in China. On the other hand, as reviewed the current outstanding projects with earth construction in China, the implementation of Ramdar's construction techniques in the field of public buildings seems to be more favored by architects and scholars. Drilling in rural areas is seriously neglected in practice. As we all know, most of the earthen structures around the world was in earthquake-prone areas. As mentioned before, in the past few years, China has experienced a lot of unpredictable and non-regional natural disasters. This also means that the challenge of using rammed earth construction as a medium to promote sustainability in the countryside is even greater, and that the use of materials should be considered in a more holistic way to promote the rural community as a whole. So, what we did. The first time I got involved in earth construction issues since 2017, that I completed the rammed earth building for 3 families in one single building block as a designer in residence, which is 7 years ago in the Ascenic village in Yunnan province, where adobe is the main building technique of drilling. The living situation is much more serious than I expected. The most of existing earth building has wall structural deformation. The big challenge of this case is to negotiate with those 3 family members to accept the earth as the domain building materials, because they are suffering from living in earthen structures in their lifetime, even they already know the one they are occupying now is not safe. I struggled a few rounds of negotiation with the stakeholders, particularly with the local government and the villagers. This case was constructed with a stakeholder engagement mode in 148 days. I found that the characteristics of rammed earth construction itself can greatly enhance the community vitality of villages in this area of serious rural hauling out. Through the intervention of social organizations and scientific research institutes that make use of labor-intensive activities, by updating the contemporary rammed earth construction technology, compared with the traditional way, from the construction efficiency and the safety performance has been greatly improved. And in the rural areas of China, the consideration of economy is the most important for occupants. And secondly, in the use of simpler and easier to operate can greatly inspire the non-professional villagers and craftsmen's self-confidence in the construction. Since then, I've believed that through such multi-stakeholder engaged rammed earth construction activities in these rural areas, we can activate the development motion of the villagers and drive the return of rural talents. Ultimately, the conflicts between urban and rural development can be balanced. In the end, the first project as I worked on, was finished in 5 months, complied with these few steps, starting from the demolishing of the existing buildings and recycling the materials and the site formation, site excavation, and the first floor, second floor, then going to the rooftop and completion the interior decorative works. And the construction strategies for rammed earth technique can save 50% of the budget compared to the local fire brick technology. After that, the second phase of the rammed earth drilling renovation project was carried out in the same village immediately at the local villagers' voluntary request. I stuck to the same design and construction organization strategies as in the first phase. Then we have this. Until now, these rebuilt rammed earth drillings are still very popular with the locals and have gradually become a local tourist hit. After those 3 years villagers' working experiences in Yunnan province, I feel more curious about how to activate the villagers' inner power of development by introducing a renovated renders techniques, and how can it be performed? This is what I had in mind when I carried out my PhD research. It was not until 2021 that I first came into contact with the villagers supported by Chinese poverty alleviation policy in Hunan province, a settlement of Yao ethnic group whose traditional architectural forms were inherited from the Hakka Tulou in Fujian province, and the fact that the poverty alleviation policy had caused some of the poorer villagers to move out of this countryside, which had generated the current problem of collapse of more renders buildings in the villages, and the inability of the people in residence to afford to repair the renders buildings. So, from that moment, a conscious summary of strategies and methods for redevelopment of renders architecture in the countryside was conducted along with the practices. I prefer to call it to be P's framework. P on one hand means the renovation of rural renders drillings need to be legal and fulfill the up-to-date policy in local development, such as the household registration system, residential land system, land use approval, and other policy provisions. On the other hand, P represents an informal governance in the village, which included the occupants needs to play the voluntary role of coordination with local relationship. As for E, which is environmental perspective, such as to maximize the implementation of local resources and the local labors, recycling use the existing demolished or excavated materials, and design with climate resilience, and so on. The second E is from economic consideration. People in rural areas somehow was defined with low-income groups because they are relying on the land-based industries to support themselves. The renovation needs to pay more attention to avoid bringing about long-time debt for household. And the last one is the socio-cultural perspective. The feature of labor-intensive for renders construction means a combination of manpower among the site and the surroundings. However, the ordinary situation in rural China is the most residents in the village is over 60 years old, which might be considered as a retired person in the cities. The truth in the village is those so-called elderly has enough power to build their own house. This represented a conflict between employment regulation and reality in the context of rural China, and it might need to be further studied in future development. So after a 3-year on-site working period in this village, the situation of living condition for people here has been substantially improved. More interesting is that with the gradual completion of the first year of renders construction in this village, the Aborigines who had already moved away from the village because they had gone out to work gradually began to return and settle in the hometowns. As a result, this village is currently undergoing a second phase of rammed earth drilling construction for these returning residents. The reason behind to attract these residents' return is complicated. One of the most obvious conflicts is that a low consumption, low density, medium quality life in the countryside is more attractive than a high consumption, high density, low quality life in the city in the current social context. Besides, to achieve the goal of rural revitalization, starting from renders building renovation, social and economic conditions need to be improved at the same time. As the on-progress organization of renders construction in this village, people in residence starting to rebuild their social connections with surroundings which got disappeared, at least with 30 years, as mentioned by local people. They have motion to organize some public activities to enhance the relationship among them. They're very proud of these renovated renders drillings, although the renders drilling in renovation seems to be more like an architectural and engineering related practices What if we extend and open up the process to the public? The engagement always brings about surprise on other non-technical perspectives, which can substantially push the rural sustainable development in China. And I hope these kind of experiences and research findings is significant for other undeveloped regions in future. Thank you very much and welcome you to co-work together and contact with us in future.